has this affected you personally and emotionally?
I'm sure you can just imagine how difficult to think that. I'd like to tell you that 3 weeks ago I would never have thought that this was an issue in the diocese. To see these things written on the internet and in newspaper articles has been devastating. I'm sure that I look like I haven't had much sleep, because I haven't. It's very difficult to have such criticisms made of you when you feel that you've given your life to the best of your ability to do what God has called you to do. But I took an oath as a bishop, and I believe that that oath has to stand firm.
Tell me what you think will happen to the faithful in Alaska if you are forced to leave.
I'm sorry?
Tell me what you think will happen to the faithful Orthodox in Alaska if you are forced to leave.
I don't want to deal with, that situation. I think that would be the wrong thing to do. I am here. I love my people, and I will not abandon them. The church believes in reconciliation and working through issues. And I keep mentioning in all of my writings about Matthew 18:15 to 17, and it talks about going to the one who's offended you personally. And if that doesn't work, you bring a couple others with you. And then if that doesn't work, then you bring it to the whole church. I've not been good in teaching that, I don't think. I think that if I would have been more forceful in that scriptural passage in particular, that this wouldn't have come to this point.
What are you doing to address the internal divisions?
We had a meeting of, I opened a meeting last week of clergy here in Alaska. I did not make it mandatory, but invited clergy who wanted to come to discuss any of their situations or their issues and concerns. And we had a very good turnout of clergy, and they were very open. I did not participate in the first day of the meeting because it needed to be done confidentially so they could bring up their questions and bring up their concerns. The next day we had I think it was almost a 6-hour meeting. We talked about these things very openly. Every one of the clergy in the meeting spoke except one, and that one would convey his concerns through the person who was facilitating the meeting. It was very painful at times. Very painful. I think sometimes, we go on life, we don't see things around us so much like we should, but they need to be brought to our attention so we can make some corrections. As I said, I'm not perfect, and I'm willing to make any kind of changes that are necessary for the faithful, but I can't compromise who I am as a bishop, and I can't compromise the oath that I took in following the rules of the church.
So what changes do you plan to make?
I don't plan to make any changes at this moment, other than I want to hear from my clergy first, all of them, so that we can come together and talk about how we can communicate better and discuss those issues that are pertinent to them. And I think from that point then, we can talk about what kinds of changes need to be made.
You mentioned that what's happening here is a historical moment. It's never happened before. But what's changed so that it is happening? Is there simply a mistake on the part of the lesser synod? Or?
It's a big mistake. It's a big mistake. The Orthodox Church is very clear in how it's run as a hierarchical church. The canons of the church, have a very clear and definitive way to bring charges against anyone in the church, either layperson and bishops, from that whole gamut from one end to the other. And that process has to be followed. For a lesser synod to have a meeting and then to have a phone conversation with the other bishops, not even in conference, and not to invite a member of the Holy Synod, which I am, of course, is completely out of the order of the church.
So why would you be targeted? What is there to gain?
From me or them?
For them.
Good question. I can't speak what's in another person's heart. There are things that we talked about in the meeting last week. There are other issues that have been brought to my attention. Both sides, the good and the bad. When I came to Alaska, it was a pretty loose diocese. I mean, there were 26 priests here, and I think 8 of them were suspended. And it was pretty loose over the years where, you know, they pretty much wanted to go where they wanted to go. When they wanted to go, they did that. I brought order and implemented rules on services and when they should serve and how they should serve. And I would tell you that anybody who's ever been here to visit, including my own clergy, would only tell you that, you know, it's made everything much more beautiful in the life of the church. So what does anybody have to gain by that? I don't know. What is the gain of going to the newspapers and the media and not coming to the person directly? I will tell you that I have never received any official notification of any of those letters that you've seen on the internet. They were forwarded to me by others who copied them on the internet. So you can draw your own conclusions from that too, I suppose.
What is it, is there anything about your style that prompted these letters that you,
I'm sorry.
is there anything about your style you think that may have
Yes,
prompted these letters?
of course. I think absolutely. I appear to be very intimidating, I think, from the standpoint of a lot of people. I'd like to think that I'm very loving, and I think that my clergy, certainly the majority of the clergy, probably maybe even a larger number than that, would certainly convey the same thing in situations where we've had to deal with problems with them. And I'm very forceful. I suppose all of those things are looked as attributes that are not positive sometimes. And when you take a stand, especially when you say, but the rules say this, and they say, well, we're going to change that rule, then no one wants to hear that.
At what point would you consider leaving?
When I'm deposed.
If there are formal allegations filed against you, what would you do?
Then there's a process. You know, we in America always, you know, brag about our judicial system and how everything is fair and there's a process to go through. But the church has had a process for 2,000 years. This process by which charges are brought against the bishop come from the 4th century. They're not something new. And you're going to get a copy of that actually in your packet too, so you can read that. There's a lot of things in there for you to read, and you might have some questions afterwards about some of those things. Even after you read them, I'd be happy to answer those. But the process has to be followed. I'm a stickler for following the rules. I think that, you know, in America we're just too free to do what we want to do, and we're taught that if you don't like it, don't do it. And our faith is not a buffet where you come in and you pick this part of the faith you like and this part that you don't like. It's everything all together, and we all struggle to work for that.
What message would you have for rural Alaska that finds these developments upsetting?
The message is the same to everybody. That we need to focus ourselves on Holy Scripture, the traditions of the church. We must stay focused. This is the Lenten period for us. This is the time when the evil one will try to distract as much as he can in any way possible. And to stay focused on prayer, fasting, and almsgiving. And if we do that, then we can come through this thing. In every adversity that all of us go through, and speaking personally in my own life, where there have been tribulations that have been just almost overwhelming, when it's finally over and you come out of it as a better person.